Yay Networks.
Welcome to Greg Louganis is Alive, the podcast that challenges what you think you know. I'm your host, Greg Louganis, and yes, I'm still alive. And I'm joined today again with my good friend and manager, Beth Zinman.
Hello, Greg. It's so nice to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a minute since we talked, actually. There's been a lot going on. And for anybody watching, I think they'll probably notice your background is slightly different.
It's different. Yeah. I'm in Florida. I'm in Naples. I was at the UKI US with G and competing there. And we ran, it was like 4 days of a trial of dog agility. And then I just drove down to see my coach and his wife, Ron and Mary Jane O'Brien.
I love that. It's very cool because you live in California and you don't often get to see Ron.
Yeah.
And Ron is someone that, I know, and you've definitely said this publicly more than one time, is somebody who's really, really important to you. That relationship with both he and Mary Jane, his wife. So.
Yeah. So it's nice to catch up and, touch base, spend some time.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So this week we thought that perhaps it was a good time to maybe dig into more kind of personal things. Some of the stories that you share on your social media, morning thoughts, that you do within like a minute to a minute and a half. So not devoting a lot of time. But because of that, you get a lot of comments and people that are like, yeah, this is, I totally went through this. When you're talking about things about being the best version of you, and what that entails, that journey.
Well, I mean, it's been interesting because like even at the dog agility trials and various venues that I go to, people say, "Oh, I love your morning thoughts," and it's so so it's great. I didn't, I was doing them and thinking, "Oh, nobody's gonna listen to this stuff," but it's really been great, and it is. I've been on so many different journeys. Health and wellness, dealing with the whole thing about concussions, that concussions can be accumulative. I had never heard that. And then just diving into that and trying to figure out, okay, what's the best thing that I can do and how can I best, treat that, also diet and all these other things, but, and also motivation, cause shoot, I'm 63, and it's funny cause I was, early on in the pandemic, I was going through this severe depression. And so it was, I knew I'd get to the other side. I mean, it was like one of those things I knew, this too shall pass. And a lot of those practices, how do you get through, and, staying, trying to stay positive, because at one point, I was like, God, I've climbed so many mountains, I'm just tired.
Yeah. Yeah. It can feel like totally overwhelming, like going through something again.
Yeah. And, so, those challenges and, and also, keeping, when growing up, it was easy because it felt easy because, there were goals in front of me, whether that was going to go to college, get my degree in college, to pursue my acting, which I did. There was always something. The Olympics, the diving. It was really clear, but now it's like, I'm not sure where do I go now?
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up. Obviously, as your manager and friend, even like
Mm-hmm.
I notice, that this is something really important for you, that you need that
Mm-hmm.
structure and goal, like where what direction you're going and what the
Mm-hmm.
purpose is, so that the things you're doing can meet that end.
Right.
And it is interesting because, especially in the beginning, and there are probably times now where you're like, probably thinking, damn it, I wish she'd give me more direction, you know, but,
Yeah.
but I think like we've learned that about each other. I
Mm-hmm.
will say this, maybe this will be interesting. But I think it's been a learning process, right? Like in terms of relationship, work
Mm-hmm.
relationship and friendship. And I have noticed that about you. And I try my best, like in my, roles
Mm-hmm.
to give what I can. But I do know that. So, like when we're working with other people on different
Mm-hmm.
projects, I will say that just give Greg the direction and he'll be great.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
just
Right.
let him
Yeah.
know and he will run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
And
when you don't have that, it's like not having a sense of purpose, and
right.
that can feel heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, because it doesn't feel, it feels scattered. It doesn't feel directed. I mean, and also, being at the U.S. Open, it kind of opens the awareness of homework I need to do, homework that I need to do with him, and all. So, it's good. It's good to have that information, but also when, because I didn't know when you asked me a couple of years ago, I said, well, what do you want? It was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it took, 2 weeks meditating and trying to figure out what is important to me,
Right.
and the two things that came up were the dogs and health and wellness. And so, it was, getting back to that, and also being my age too, and then looking back retrospect, it's like, well, were those goals my goals?
Mm.
Because oftentimes we take on what other people see in us and say, oh,
Yeah.
you should do XYZ, you
Yeah.
should go into diving, you should do this, you should do that, and sometimes we do because we lack the commitment to any type of conviction of, oh yeah, that's what I want. A lot of times we're just searching,
Yeah.
so,
And
well, I'll try
absorbing
this on.
and
Yeah.
absorbing, right? Like what's happening around us, what people are saying, um, I think that's a particularly poignant point,
Mm-hmm.
that we can kind of lose ourselves or a direction, just kind of listening to what's going on around us and the people that are around us, maybe trying to be helpful.
Mhm.
you know,
No,
maybe
I
it's
think
not.
everybody's trying to be helpful. I
Yeah.
think they're trying to be helpful to, um, but also it's interesting in the delivery too of that information. Oh, you have to do that. And
Mm,
it's like a have to kind of thing. And and then so you think, oh my God, I have to do that. So, but really kind of taking a step back, and that's the one thing that I feel that I'm learning is to take a breath, and tap into my body. What is my body saying? What does that feel like?
yeah.
And then coming from that place, because then it feels in alignment. That, I mean, I stepped away from Red Bull, because I didn't
Yeah.
feel that it was that Red Bull, the product, was in alignment with who I wanted to be, who I wanted to present.
Right.
I
And
love the divers. I miss the divers
yeah, I was going to say on the
tremendously.
surface, it seems like a great job for you,
Mhm.
getting to work with the divers and working in diving. I mean, hello, that aspect is a no brainer. But yeah, the
Right.
product, who's sponsoring is not really in alignment with who you are and what you want to promote.
This episode has been brought to you by Green Chef. I know the holidays can be really challenging to stay to our health and weight goals with food, but Green Chef helps you stay on that path of health and wellness. They make it so easy. Eat clean the easy way with Green Chef recipes that help manage your weight and support your wellness goals without skimping on flavor. This November, Green Chef has recipes like buttery lemon garlic shrimp, harissa apricot chicken, maple butternut squash risotto, and sriracha tamari beef bowls. You don't have to lose track of healthy eating habits during the holidays. Every Green Chef customer gets a free session with our registered dietitian who can walk you through how to make clean eating work for you. Sign up and start your journey towards better health today. I like Green Chef because they do your thinking for you. They organize everything so it's all in one place and you can eat delicious meals that are clean, healthy, and fresh. For Green Chef's best deal of the year, get $250 off with code GregPod250 at greenchef.com/GregPod250. Again, for Green Chef's best deal of the year, get $250 off with code GregPod250 at greenchef.com/GregPod250. Green Chef, the number one meal kit for eating well. But I also had that when I was growing up too, because like when we were at Mission Viejo, they were sponsored by Philip Morris.
I can't even.
And
Every time you
yeah,
say that, Greg, I can't even get my head around that.
well,
A
think of it.
cigarette company.
Yeah, but back in those days, I mean, Virginia
Right.
Slims did, the tennis, women's tennis.
Well, people were smoking indoors everywhere and it was, no big deal. And yeah.
Well, we knew that it was not healthy,
Right.
but even then, but it was, a lot of these products, aren't, they're maybe trying to clean up their image or something, to get some type of association.
Yeah.
And in a healthier direction, or in other environments or something. But to be it is hard. It's hard because oftentimes, and I feel for a lot of people who might be get into endorsing certain products. It's one thing, and also implied endorsement too.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were diving for Mission Viejo, and it was a youth team, and we're sponsored by Philip Morris. That was kind of strange bedfellows.
That is definitely a case of strange bedfellows. Talking about stuff that's not in alignment, leads me to something that you and I have talked about before, and have come back to a couple of times. But when you and why you walked away from Red Bull, not that there was anything offensive they did to you, but it wasn't in alignment with what you want. And when we remove these things, it makes space, to be able to take in what we do want.
Well, and that was the thing that was so frustrating, is like, okay, everybody says, one door close, one door closes, another door opens. I was like, open. It's like, I'm waiting for that open door, right? Give me that open door. But and it can really challenge you. It can challenge your conviction and how, and staying true to to that. So yeah, I mean, and it's all a process. We're all where we're at, at
Yes.
any given time.
And even when we're people that are doing the work, right? This
Mhm.
is, a lot of us in this space of just trying to be more mindful and,
Mhm.
trying to do the best for ourselves and, get reverbs around us into the people around us.
Mhm.
Sometimes it doesn't always go, the way we want it to. Sometimes there's a
Right.
trigger. A
Mhm.
few moments ago, as we were talking, I was thinking about Prunedale. We don't have to unpack that, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do think it's
Oh
something.
my.
Yeah, I do think it's something that's interesting,
Right.
because it was an earlier opportunity in our relationship to learn, from each other.
Right.
Um,
Well, I
and
think
yeah.
I think what happens, especially when emotions, if you're
Hmm.
tired or hungry or any given discomfort,
Yeah.
and tap into emotion with that, it's it oftentimes I mean, it's like the four agreements,
Yeah.
to
Be
be
impeccable
impeccable
with your
with your
word.
word. Don't
Don't
take
take any.
anything
Go ahead.
personally. Um,
Don't make assumptions. I love this one.
oh,
I can't
don't
believe I
don't
forgot it.
assume. Don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions.
Right. And
And
then
do your best.
always do your best. Yeah.
Always do your best.
Yeah.
And the thing about about that whole situation in Prunedale, it it really kind of exposed a lot of our wounds,
Mm-hmm.
our wounds that, oh, where did that come from? Because a
100%.
lot of times when we are in the heat of an emotional event, then if we're reacting, then we're reacting from a very hurt and fearful place.
Yeah. Well, when we unpacked it, we learned that, you were able to verbalize where it was coming from for you.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
I was able to verbalize, where it was coming from for me. So,
Right.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, and it was all, you know uh, both parties making assumptions,
yeah.
and then and also taking things personally,
Right.
and so it just really is. I mean, when things, and it's funny too, because I also am thinking about judgment
Mm-hmm.
as well, because that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing. Because when we were talking to Aaron, Yogi Aaron, he said
Mm-hmm.
that he lost touch with one of his friends for years because his friend swore he was non-judgmental, and got very offended. And but we're judging machines. We're judging all the time. If you're making a comparison, no
Yeah.
matter if it's good or, it can be a good comparison, but that's still judging,
Yeah. I mean,
you
even
know?
discernment over something,
Mhm.
you're judging. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so interesting that, words can be so powerful, but
Mm.
they can
Hmm.
be so harmful, so damaging.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, for you and I
Mhm.
think, for me, I'm like, Greg is a great human, like obviously
Um,
this was, one of those crazy things. Um, and I'm actually going to assume that
yeah.
you probably thought something similar, like I know this lady's not trying to hurt me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think, sometimes even in the midst of best efforts, we can have
Mhm.
these moments.
Right. And they do leave residue,
Yeah.
and it does leave a residue. So it is important, and that's the reason, why, I feel with my morning thoughts, what I try to get across is, the impermanence of life,
Yeah.
that everything is changing, everything is evolving. Nothing is fixed. So, even if you have, certain judgment about something, it's going to change.
Yeah. Very true.
And so to not lock into, oh, it has to be this way, and that was the other point of, to challenge the things we think we know in the podcast, to challenge things that we think we know, because like when we have a belief, that belief comes from somewhere, and a belief is just a thought.
Yeah.
So it's a thought that we continue to think. It doesn't make it true.
Yeah. And we can always choose new thoughts, right?
Yeah. And also, if you consider the source, where that thought came from.
So you have to judge it? You're saying you have to judge it?
Well, what I like to think of is how does it feel?
Right. You taught me that, actually, like, just to feel what's happening
Yeah.
in the body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. To try something on, see how that feels. Well, does that feel good or bad? Or it doesn't feel quite right. And yeah, so it's, and your mind lies to you,
Yeah.
right? Your body tells you the truth.
Yeah. Well, the mind has all that programming you've kind of had over all these years of however long, it's been. And yeah, you have these, kind of immediate thoughts that may not be the truth.
Yeah. And the stories that we tell ourselves.
Correct.
The stories, I mean, because we're all trying to make ourselves out to be here as heroes.
Hmm.
We always say the best, oftentimes we share the best of ourselves. And then you have to wonder, well, why is that important? Or is it important?
Yeah. I mean, is it? I don't know. As a mom, I always told my girls, as long as you're not hurting anyone, do what's good for you, as long as you're not hurting anyone. It didn't stop anybody from leaning into codependency here and there, in their relationships, or maybe more often than here and there,
Right.
because,
Yeah.
stuff happens, and, sometimes we don't feel great about ourselves, or we just think it's our job
Yeah.
to do what we think other people want or expect. But yeah,
Right.
I think as long as your intent is not to hurt anyone, I feel like intent is really important,
Yeah. But even in codependence, you can do a lot of harm.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And also in codependence, oftentimes it's not that, it's just more habitual.
Yeah, it's a default behavior.
Right. And so then it's something that we're familiar with, and don't take the time to address it, and kind of look at it, analyze it. I've been going through these little YouTube videos on Buddhism, and a lot of the parables and all are just, it's like, wow, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Talking about discernment rather than judgment. Discernment, and difference between, because I detach. I like,
it's a great
pull
Aquarian
away.
go-to.
Yeah. So I'll be present. I'll be there physically, but I won't be there any other way.
Yeah.
So that is my my default. That I'm working on, and it's all a process.
Right.
It's recognizing something, and then having the awareness, to make a different choice or different decision.
Right. Well, like I said, what's the intent? So even if you're in that old default behavior that maybe isn't really serving anyone well, like, oops, be in
Yeah,
awareness and, oh, can I shift
yeah,
this?
yeah.
You know?
But I think if we share those, openly, authentically, um, honestly, like when I said, oh gosh, I felt abandoned, and
Oh,
that it was that
yeah.
that whole abandonment thing, that I
Yeah.
came from. I'm adopted. My mother,
Hmm.
gave me up, and so I felt abandoned, and so that, there's so many really deep seated pains
Yeah.
that resurface. But if you recognize it and acknowledge it and share it, then it's like, oh, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand. So it gives a greater awareness, uh, and also forgiving. To get to that place of forgiveness for yourself. Because oftentimes in those situations we aren't very nice. We have to forgive ourselves.
Right. Right. Well,
That's an
yeah. I
important
mean,
thing.
in our situation, I think as you started feeling triggered, then yes, it started becoming more obvious because there were certain things that, you weren't or whatever, like not doing,
Mhm.
but also same here, So
Yeah.
on my front and being triggered, like being a single mom and someone who's always like taking charge, which
Mhm.
might make for a good manager, but as a human being, like in personal relationships, it's like, oh my God, for F's sake, would somebody else just like,
No.
step up? Oh my God. Or how
Yeah.
much more can I give? So in that moment between you and I, it was like, how much more can I give? Because my body was so exhausted and
Mhm.
I thought I was doing the right things, but it wasn't conveying to you in that way,
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, yes. So my behaviors started being like, okay, okay. And I think I even said at one point, like, all right, Greg, I'm like 2 seconds from losing it,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know? But yeah, yes, relationships in life are certainly interesting. And I think,
Yeah.
I think your morning thoughts, um, are so helpful for people, on social because these are things that like we all deal with, you
Mhm.
know?
Well, I think also another thing that has been pretty present too is the realization, because for me, I kind of jumped from one relationship to another relationship pretty quick. So going from relationship to relationship to relationship, I was making a lot of the same mistakes
Hmm.
over and over again. So
Hmm.
it's like kind of, choosing the same person or whatever, or getting
Yeah.
myself into, similar situations that I've been in the past.
Right.
And I think, this time around, and I always stepped up, I did a little better, did a little,
Yeah.
except Daniel. Daniel was pretty special. Daniel was, and that was just kind of a distance thing that we knew that a long distance relationship wouldn't work for either one of us because he was an incredible person.
Yeah.
Um, but also now being single, it's just like I realized that in order to attract, going to law of attraction, in order to attract what I want or what I dream of, I have to be that. So how do I become that?
Yeah.
And because like attracts like, and so yeah, so I'm very kind of aware of that path. I'm trying to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Also on the single front, I'm just pondering that. Okay.
Mhm. Well, thank you for joining us, and like, subscribe, share. the podcast, and don't miss an episode. Love to have you here, and thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. So see you next time. Namaste.
Yay Networks.